Welcome to another episode of the Sales Manager Academy podcast. As always, I'm your host, Omar, and we talk about leadership in the boutique retail world. What does boutique retail world mean? It means wireless retail, AV, appliances, pretty much everything outside of what your big box retail locations would be. Typically, these are going to be more closer to like mom and pop locations. Either you have one location, you're the owner operator, or you're within an organization that has typically under 1,000 locations. Listen, I grew up in a company that had, when I first joined, about 200 locations across the US. Really, it was like 4 or 5 states. When I left the organization, we had just acquired 70 new locations, 75 new locations, which brought their grand total to about 750. Okay, so I've seen what the growth can be from, almost quadrupling in size from when you first join to when you leave. And I've seen what the pains are from an organization. If you think that, hey, at 50 locations, at 10 locations, we're still growing. We're not that big. There's a lot of stuff that we're not able to do. I'm here to tell you that you'd be surprised at what can happen, what you can bring on board, what kind of change you can bring to the organization as a whole, even though you think that either we don't have the resources or it's too large for me to be able to do anything, right? You'd be very, very surprised. So don't count yourself out. There's a lot that even multi-billion dollar corporations that have thousands of locations across the US still don't get right. Uh, and that's actually one of the things we're going to talk about today because I specialize in coaching in developing employees, more so leaders, to help their employees grow. Okay. We can talk about salesmanship, we can talk about skills, we can talk about the craft. The real thing is that as a leader, you need to be able to learn to develop your people. Okay. I remember somebody who recently got promoted posting about they can't wait as a DM to be able to teach their people to sell, right? I can't wait to show them how to sell. It's not about showing them how to sell. Okay. The selling portion is actually pretty easy. What you need to do is not show your people how to sell. You need to develop and train and coach your people. Because when you bring a level of training, then it elevates your people. It elevates the skill, it elevates the craft that they have. Instead of you coming in playing the hero and saving them from having bad sales days, from having a bad sales interaction. You're not doing anything in that case because you're robbing them of the experience of being able to learn. And that's a huge thing. And that's a very hard thing for a lot of people to understand, especially when there is no real training and developing set up to make sure that you're fostered, to make sure that those habits are innately fostered and developed. And that's the hard part sometimes for a lot of people, especially when you feel that you don't have the right support from the organization, when you don't know what resources are available out there, or you think that, you know what, we're going to throw in and do the traditional corporate training. We're going to do an 8 hour data dump. We're going to do it for 5 days straight. Hey, it's going to be a lot of information. All these companies who say it's a fast-paced environment, what that means is that they do not have any training and development actually set up. So what they're really saying is, we're just going to throw spaghetti against the wall. We think these people would be great. We're just going to throw it against the wall and see who sticks. And then we're going to say the other ones just couldn't cut it in our company because we're too fast paced. No, you're just disorganized. You're dysfunctional. And by investing instead of ignoring development and training, you would be surprised at how much more you can get from employees, from new hires. It is that detrimental. So when you continue to churn and burn through new hires, through employees, and you or even existing employees who you move into leadership roles and constantly demote. If you say, yeah, most of our teams can't hack it, can't cut it as a leader, and we put them in there and then we have to demote them, but eventually find somebody who does. Once again, that means there's a dysfunctionality, there's a disconnect between what's reality and training and developing. Okay, you're not training and developing people, and you're wondering why you have such a high attrition rate, such high churn of employees, and you can't pinpoint it. Part of the reason is the way that the training is done. Okay. So today we're going to talk about a little bit more closer to home, where we're talking about how we get real world results through coaching. Okay. We don't need an 8 hour data dump. We don't need a corporate traditional training. There's so much research out there that shows that those are just not functionally working. But yet, the majority of consultants, the majority of companies that go out to find people out there or to find programs out there are wondering why the hell this doesn't work? Why are we're spending so much money on training and developing, but it's not working. It's because they're sticking to the old methods instead of moving to actual methods that work. And believe it or not, a lot of consulting companies don't want to move to those methods because it means less work for them because those companies, those individuals will actually get better results. And that's the hard part. Okay. The truth is, there are things that work out there. They don't have to be these massive data dumps. What you need is not theatrical leadership bullshit like 8 hour coaching courses, a weekend data dump. You need real world results and you need a program that's going to get you there. You need a coaching system that's going to get you there. Okay. And what we want to work on are things that aren't too long, they're not corporate, and they're not disconnected from the real world. Okay. So that's what we're talking about. Now, traditional leadership training is designed more for an environment that really doesn't exist anymore. Okay. Not for the reality of what we see in day-to-day interaction, especially in the retail world, in the boutique retail world. Okay. So we're not here taking you out of the environment and putting you into this controlled environment and we control the interactions. We data dump on you, give you a bunch of information, and then we do a fake role play session and make it pie in the sky and everybody else absorbs and there's only like one interaction. There is no follow-up, there's no consistency there. Okay. In the real world, in our world where we're typically understaffed and we're trying to figure out how can we do coaching, how can we do training when I'm running a 1-in-1 day or when I'm running a 1-in-2 and I got 5 people waiting. It sucks, right? I've been there. I know what it's like. It's rush. It might feel great because you have so many cells, especially when you're a DM and you jump in and you help on the sales floor and you guys close a dramatic amount. I'm here to tell you, as a DM, as an area manager, as a regional, that's the worst thing you can do. You're not there to sell. You're there to train and develop your people so that they can have a better quality of not just income coming in, which equates to a better life, because obviously things cost money. Okay. But the reality is that you're robbing them of being able to develop their skill sets. You're robbing them of being able to develop their craft, to be able to do more themselves, to be able to think differently, to problem solve. Because once you start to help your people develop and you actually help them create new neural connections, new neural pathways, muscles that haven't been used in the past or fully developed in the past, you will start to see that they will bring more to the table. And you, as an area manager, as a DM, as a regional, don't have to stress as much. At the beginning, you're going to do a lot of work, but then it's cultivating and sustaining the work so that they can perform it and you can focus on other areas of the business, right? Because it means you're going to have less churn, less employee attrition. You're going to have better culture without having to make a fucking culture plan. If you have to make a culture plan, you'd have no culture because you have no training, no developing. You're not investing in your people. So if you don't invest in your people will not invest in you as much. That's a huge thing. We've all been on that side of the fence where we feel an organization's just not really, they don't care about us. They don't invest in us, right? And the only way I can grow within the organization is if I kiss ass to leadership. And that's the reason nothing changes because I want change. I don't want to be a kiss ass. And that's what you want to change. Because when you are training and developing your people, the results will show. And then you can speak to the results. You can go to the leadership. There's still some politics that are played. But now you have the politics of I can bring results, my team can bring results, or you can go with the person that doesn't bring any results and wonder why. Okay. Because at the end of the day, those executive leaders are also being looked at. And when they promote people that aren't bringing results, people start to wonder, like, what's going on? So now they put their neck on the line for somebody who isn't doing anything for them. And that puts them in a more precarious position, especially in our day and age. So understand that results are part of it, but also cultivating relationships is going to be another aspect of it. We won't cover that today. Okay. We're going to cover more the coaching aspect. So part of it, don't focus on, I'm going to push my people if they don't hit those KPIs. I'm just going to make them do, an extra class, waste their time, waste my time. Do coaching in real time. Offer feedback, take them off, make it a priority that when you do your store visits, you will spend about 15 minutes minimum, not with the entire team. Okay. Pick the person that is most coachable, meaning that they're more open to the information, especially if you're doing this for the first time, and take them aside and be like, hey, I'm going to do something different. We're going to do an actual coaching session. This is not a write up. Coaching sessions are not write ups. Understand that. When you write somebody up, that is not you coaching them. I don't care what the fuck HR says. Write ups and coaching sessions are two separate things. You coach people because you want to train and develop them and you want them to get better at what they're doing. It's just like if you're the coach on a team, you do consistent coachings, you do consistent practices to get your people better. And oftentimes it focuses on the basics because it's the basics, the foundations that make a difference. Once they have their foundation solid, then they can start making different plays that will be a little bit different and more suited for their personality, for their skill sets. But first things first, we got to get you on the right foundation for the basics. So set them aside, let them know, like, hey, we're going to do this. And if you're wondering, like, hey, what is something that I could do? I give my last one away. Oh, no, here we go. You can do something like this, right? It's a coaching form. You can easily grab it. You got your goal section, your goal settings, right? Previous goals, attained goals I want to hit. This is what I'm going to focus on. These are the 3 steps I'm going to do to take it. And this is my commitment. This is what I'm going to do. I will do this because of this. Boom. And this is what it means. So when you start doing stuff like that, that makes a difference for your people because now you're giving them a focus for them to attain and they got better insights. Now, we've talked about that before. And as always, right, we don't talk about the theory aspect. This is stuff that's worked. This is stuff I've used in the past, hundreds of employees, hundreds of stores, and it does yield results. And the best part about it is that the visualization practice that you do during that coaching exercise is so much better than when you do a role play session and make everything awkward because your brain cannot differentiate between what is visualized and what is actually done when you're running practices. Okay. Your body is a different story. Right now, we're talking about the brain. It doesn't understand the difference between visualization and doing something in real life. It's essentially the same. You can run multiple visualization practices at a faster clip than you can do in real time with an actual role playing session. And it doesn't have to be awkward because there's going to be things that your employees thinking about during that interaction that they're not going to do in person or that they completely forgot about. But their mind's like, yeah, I remember this interaction. I wish it had gone like this. Or what if they had said this instead of this? And that's where the visualization practices come in play. And that makes a big difference. Now, you don't need leadership theory. You can read as many books as you want on leadership, on sales. I've been there, I've done it. I have hundreds of books that I've read when it comes to leadership development, salesmanship, right over my, God, I'd say, but like almost 20 plus years of doing sales, of doing leadership. Uh, and the ones that have helped the best are honestly the ones where I actually took action on, where I use the information right away. I was like, hey, I like this. I'm going to use this. And that's what got me the results because I used it in real time. And then I went back and took a look at it. And when you're trying to figure out how can I develop my coaching system, how can I develop my coaching style as a leader, you can read as much as you want. The reading aspect doesn't matter as much as the taking action, right? What are the things I can be actionable on? And the thing is that when you do like a data dump training course, a lot of it is about teaching you a bunch of principles and just throwing a bunch of information, and hopefully something will stick. Because when you do any of those training materials, realistically, you're going to remember about 10 to 20% of the information. And same thing with your employees. You might remember a little bit more if you're really great at taking notes, but the realistic aspect is that most people forget over 80% of the information after they leave. At first, it's fresh because it was just learned. But just like anything that's not used, it atrophies, right? So if you don't move your arm and you keep it in a certain position for a very long time, eventually it goes numb. Eventually it loses, the blood flow, the muscle atrophies, and you lose that arm. It's the same thing when it comes to the information learned. If the information is not practiced upon, actioned upon, it will not be remembered and retained. But you know what will be? And this is the beautiful thing about these courses where a lot of people make their money. It makes you feel good. You look back at that and you're like, that was such a great experience. It makes you feel good. You may have not used the information, but man, was that a great weekend. That completely devoids it of anything. Oh man, that one piece I took did me so well. Imagine if you were able to take away seven pieces instead of one piece of information that you took action on and it became part of your routine. That's where you see the difference. Because instead of seeing a 10 to 20% bump, now you're seeing a 50 to 70% bump in the results you get back. And when you do micro learnings, when you chunk things down, learn a little piece, take action on it, that allows you to retain it. It's essentially called a habit loop, right? You start making it part of your habits. You start integrating it in your results, in your actions that you take. When you do coaching sessions and you help your people do that as well, they start to create their own habit loops. They start to form new habits, new neural pathways. They start to override old habits with new habits. And that starts to get them 1% better at a faster clip. And before you know it, that underperformer you had is, oh my God, they're one of my best employees. They constantly perform well. They're helping with other people on the team, with their peers. They're coaching and developing alongside them as well. I have a future leader on my bench now. It goes from being able to raise great sellers to now you're also raising and helping your people grow and develop as leaders. It starts to make a big difference. And that's where we want to go as coaches, as trainers. We're more than just a district manager, a district sales leader, an area sales leader, a regional director. We're more than that. We're developers of future leaders. And that's what we have to see ourselves and start taking the actions that are going to go make us towards that. Now, part of the coaching aspect, as you become better over time, is asking better pointed questions that are going to yield the question faster. At first, when you're doing these and you're not familiar with how to do coaching very well, it's your first time coaching, you're going to kind of wander a little bit until you find your pathway. You want to practice in the mirror before you do any of this in person with other people. And you don't have to spend hours and hours and hours doing it. Once you understand, okay, I need to ask a couple of good questions because I want to ask the question and then shut the fuck up and let my person talk 80% of the time, that's going to get me those results because they're going to start answering the questions. They're going to start figuring things out. They're not going to look at me to solve their problems. They're going to look at me as the support to help them solve their problems. And when you start to do that, They start to feel more confident in the actions they take. So they stop questioning whether I should do this or not. And they start doing more, and you start seeing more results. And more importantly, your people start to see better results for themselves. And just like any habit loop, that gives them an endorphin rush. That starts to get ingrained faster. And that's why it's so important to do micro learning sessions, because it gives them something actionable that they can focus on, that they can see results from faster and get that endorphin rush faster. And they can start incorporating it into their habits much faster, into the actions that they take. That's the important thing of doing coaching sessions at a much faster, more consistent routine basis. And if you're like, Omar, but I see my locations 3 to 5 times a month, right? I manage 5, 10, 15, 25 locations. So it's very difficult for me to spend as much time with my people. That's great. It means you focus on developing other people to uh, kids. You focus on developing other people faster. And that allows you to see the results faster. It allows them to see the results faster. And by asking the right questions and getting them to think through the problems, and then they start having to really use those muscles that they haven't used, or better yet, start creating new neural connections that haven't been developed before. It literally allows them to think differently about situations. And it allows them that growth. And that growth is where they see that confidence in themselves. And they see you as a leader that I may not always agree with you. I may not always like you as a leader, but you know what? Nobody's ever done what you've done and invested time in helping me grow as an individual. As a leader, you will understand that your team will not like you 100% of the time. And that's perfectly fine. They're not supposed to like you 100% of the time, because you will bring change, and people are naturally adverse to change. But once they jump on the wagon of change, instead of fighting it, they will see themselves in a better side. And that's what we want to get to. Because the one thing that's going to that is constant in what we do is change. Doesn't matter what industry you're in, things will constantly change. And when we make that change a little bit easier, when we make that landing a little bit softer, it's easier for your team to say, okay, I don't like this, but let's do it. And for us that see our pay plans change, constantly throughout the year, because I've been in organizations where that pay plan changes 2 to 4 times in a year, almost every quarter. And having to adapt and having my teams have to adapt to that, I know that this as a leader, it fucking sucks, because those conversations, it's like, what the fuck am I going to do now? Right? It's changed, and this is what we need to focus on. And I just finished getting them on board with this. How am I going to just switch gears and get them on board with this now? But when you have that good coaching, when you have those good skill sets set up, and when you've developed your sales leaders, your local sales leaders, your store managers, your store leads, your assistant managers to get on board with the coaching sessions, you start to see that shift faster, because it's not so much having to shift all the actions towards KPIs. It's, you know what? We're just changing this focus. We've got this framework. It's plug and play. Boom, boom, boom. And we're just switching it and getting to it. And that's the big thing. Okay. Now, the other thing as a leader that you need to understand is that a title isn't going to be everything. It's your discipline as a leader to help develop others that's going to make a difference. That's going to change how your people see you. And you build that through habits. And you can develop some of your people that don't have titles, right? If they're really great, you can start coaching them, start developing them. The issue with a lot of organizations is that the reason you don't have a bench for leadership, and you have to constantly also look for people from outside. They're like, yeah, we're going to bring them in. They're going to be great. They were great at this other organization. You guys don't understand the differences. We might be in the same industry, but every organization runs differently. They have their different nuances on the way operations work, on the way departments work together, sometimes don't work together. Okay, that they come in and then those resources are no longer there that they had before. Those connections with leaders that they had aren't there before. So they have to build that. So even though they may have the skills and the experience from a different organization, it's still going to take them 6 to 9 months to really ramp up and learn the new organization. Yeah, they don't have to learn the sales skills, they don't have to learn that or the industry itself, but they have to learn the organization. But when you've developed people from your company to take up leadership roles and they want to grow, that's a win-win because they understand the organization. They already have the connections built, right? Those soft skills have already been developed. They have connections within not just the home office, but also the field leaders. They have that within the organization. So they don't need as much of a ramp up. And when you, as their leader, have also been developing them for that next step, it's easier for them to step into it and run with it because now they have a taste and understanding of what it means to be in that role so that they don't succumb to the pitfalls that most people without that experience or without that proper training go through. Listen, in the wireless industry, one of the biggest things I've seen, or I used to see, okay, in my day, was whenever corporate employees tried to make the switch to dealers. Okay. And I've worked both. I understand the corporate side and I also understand the retail side, the authorized retail side. And it was always very difficult for them because on the corporate side, they had a lot more resources. They had a lot more, and they also had to do less than what on the authorized side had to do. And they weren't used to that. And it was very difficult for them to adjust. But when an employee from an authorized seller went to the corporate side, it was very easy for them to adjust because they didn't have to worry about as much. They didn't have to do as much on the corporate side. And if you guys don't know, most corporate companies in the wireless side have reduced the number of corporate locations. So now they rely a lot more. I think it's like 70 to almost 80+% of the business comes from authorized resellers, not the corporate side. To give you an idea of like how much those companies and entities rely on the reseller side. So you can see where there's going to be a lot more opportunity and a lot more growth as well because these locations are going faster. They grow in more rural locations. There's more opportunity for upward mobility, but there's also more churn because a lot of them haven't figured out how to do coaching, how to do training and developing properly. Where on the corporate side, they're unionized. So it's more difficult to get fired essentially unless you quit or you're committing fraud, stuff like that. But it's also it makes it kind of like a tough choice because there's a certain path that they have to go through. So they can't just hire somebody and just, okay, you're not working out and just let you go. Can't do that. They have to focus on training and developing. And that's where the real difference starts to rely on. I'm not saying training and developing turns people soft. That's not what happens. I've trained and developed countless markets where the results were just ridiculous. I've turned locations that were not battleship or flagship locations. If you don't know those terms, look them up. Uh, but I've turned them into flagship locations in 6 months, 6 months or less. I've turned a flagship location that people have said, yeah, that's as good as they're going to do. They're not going to really do any more than that. That's kind of like their max. And I've doubled their output on a consistent off-season basis. You can see real great results. You just have to have the system in place. And the system starts with you as a leader, coaching and developing your people and having a system and routine and telling your people and making sure your people know, I'm going to invest in your growth. Because as a leader, that is how you become better and how I get better. Because by you making more money and working less, having less stress, also means I work less and I will be taken care of. I never shied away from letting my people know that the more money they made, the more money I made. So it behooved me. It was in my best interest to make sure that they were trained as best as they could, that they were making as much money as they could, because when they were doing that, I didn't have to worry about my career. I didn't have to worry about my position. I didn't have to worry about how much money I was making. I didn't have to jump in to stores to sell for my people, to play the hero for my people. I made them the heroes of the story. And that's what you want to do as a leader. Go from being the hero of the story to being the guide and mentor. Because when they become the heroes, you're going to feel like a hero. And your company, your leadership is going to see you as a hero because you're doing something that it's taking them forever how to figure out. And they just can't cut it. And they wonder why, whenever we pull certain people away, it just something happens and we just can't continue this. But when you constantly have a bench that's growing, you have leadership potential, you're bringing people on board that most other managers, most other dealers, most other DMs would just be like, nah, I'm not going to bring you on board. You don't have what it takes to cut it here. And you bring those people on board and they're outperforming some of the other veterans in other markets. I've seen it happen. I've done it. I know it's possible. More importantly, I know it's repeatable. And that's the most important aspect for you as a leader to understand is when you have a simple coaching system to help develop and train your people, that simple system is repeatable. And that's the winning combination. Having a system that's repeatable. So, guys, I want to say thank you once again for taking time, spending it with me here at the Sales Manager Academy podcast. Sorry for the interruption with my kids. They're running around. It's Memorial Day. My kids are out for the summer. Uh, so, they're having a blast. And thanks, guys. I'll catch you on the next one.